Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 394 of the All Dolphins podcast. It is Tuesday, which means it's behind enemy lines time. And there's no greater enemy of the Miami Dolphins these days than the Buffalo Bills. And to talk about the Bills and how, they're on their way rolling to a fifth consecutive AFC's titles and this matchup, if there really is one, Sunday against the Dolphins at Highmark Stadium. I'm joined by good friend Tim Graham of The Athletic. Tim Graham, how are you, sir?
Alan, I'm doing well. The way you say that, it's almost like there's a hurricane coming, or we're expecting some sort of weather when you say if there's going to be a matchup. I think this game will be played, but you don't sound too optimistic for the Dolphins' chances.
No, there's no reason to be optimistic. But I did write on the website today, Miami Dolphins on SI.com, about the 10 greatest upset victories in Dolphin history because, hey, they're going to play the game. And I dug up this interesting nugget, which involves the Bills, that under Mike McDaniel, the biggest point spread the Dolphins overcame as an underdog to win was 4.5 points. It was against the Buffalo Bills in that sauna in September 2022 when the Dolphins won 21-19.
Yeah, there is a bit of an asterisk on that. The Bills came into that game banged up, and they were just dropping like flies. And, of course, I think the NFL started to take a closer look at those afternoon games early in the season, and sun on one side of the field, shade on the other side of the field, a bit of a competitive advantage for the Dolphins. And the Bills still almost won that game with a bunch of backups on the field. It is amazing, especially as, someone who covered the Patriots dynasty. You can see Tom Brady and Bill Belichick having a team's number for a long period of time, but to see how much the Bills have owned the Dolphins, regardless of who the coach has been, we're talking Doug Marrone and Rex Ryan. And of course, since Sean McDermott and Josh Allen have been involved, it's been pretty lopsided, but yeah, it's the Dolphins have really struggled against the Bills, whether they're wounded, on the hitting the reset button, on the climb, whatever. It has been an incredibly one-sided series.
Yeah, and Tim, I will suggest you don't check out the comments. I always check the comments after all of my videos to get feedback and to try to improve the podcast as we go along. Your comments about part of the reasons the Bills lost in Miami in 2022, I am going to create quite the reaction. My thing on that game was, hey, the Dolphins won. That's fine. They also were out game 497 to 212. And it was one of those perfect storm where a lot of things had to happen right because it wasn't like the Dolphins dominated that game. And the thing is, I looked at Josh Allen's stats just 5 minutes ago. He's got 34 career touchdown passes against the Dolphins. Second highest total is 18 against New England. And it's like no matter what season he has, I mean, his passer rating is over 100 every one of his starts except for two of them. And it's like, what is it about the Dolphins that's
one of those other rare Dolphins victories? Charles Clay dropped what would have been a touchdown to win the game on the Hail Mary at the end. Josh Allen pulling everything out of his rear that he could to stay alive and scramble around and buy time, and then finally unleashed a ball that Charles Clay should have caught. And so, Charles Clay helping out his former team a little bit there.
Very nice of him. Very thoughtful of him. So I guess, not that I don't think you and I bought it, but a lot of people are there. Here comes the Bills collapse. This is year to get them because they lost Hyde, Poyer, Mitch Morse. I'm going to forget some Stephon Diggs, a lot of big names out the door. And yet here we are. And as I said earlier, they're kind of sailing towards yet another AFC's title.
Yeah, as many wins as the rest of the division combined. And of course, the division is going to help the Bills out quite a bit here. We knew that the Patriots weren't going to be very good. I think that despite the preseason interest in the Jets, what a trick that was. I didn't buy into it. That's not because I'm some kind of genius. It's just I needed to see Aaron Rodgers do it. And just because he got hurt 4 plays into the 2023 season doesn't mean he was going to be good. We still needed to see if Aaron Rodgers was going to be a fit with the Jets, if they had enough to do it. And it was weird how just because Aaron Rodgers was healthy, everybody assumed he was going to be just fine. coming back on the patched up Achilles tendon. And let's just go ahead and assume that this is going to be 2021 version of Aaron Rodgers, and the guy stopped aging. So we're seeing a pretty competent quarterback, but a very average quarterback, certainly not the type of quarterback play that's going to raise all ships. And it's just been disarray, which it always seems to be with the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
The Dolphins are the team that worried me the most from a Bills standpoint. I mean, in terms of the breaking the streak of AFC East division titles. I mean, I don't care one way or the other. If the Bills continue to win, it's nice to cover a winner for a change, but the team that I thought threatened the Bills the most would be Miami. However, I didn't like what Miami lost, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. And the one thing that did come to fruition, Tua Tagovailoa's health. You can't bank on it, unfortunately. And the team is night and day different with him on the field than anybody else that they could put on there. And it's been unfortunate for Dolphins fans to see how big of a change it makes and how much that the offense just plummets, that a guy like Tyreek Hill can't even make a dent in a defense without Tua Tagovailoa. It goes to show you how important Tua is.
Yeah, but and here's the thing too, is even with Tua, it's not the same offense. Again, if you look at yards per completion, there are 34 quarterbacks with enough attempts to qualify. Tua's 34th this season. There's just no passes downfield. There were 2 against Jacksonville, and that's been it pretty much. And they had 1 against who they play Sunday, Arizona, little floater to Tyreek Hill. Everything else is at the line of scrimmage, or I mean, it's very, very, very short that they completely eliminated that. Are you surprised by how well the Bills have played? I mean, they're on a pretty nice roll now. They won 3 in a row. They completely spanked Seattle on Sunday.
No, I think that even before the season, if you were to give me the schedule and break it down wins and losses, I'd probably have them at around 6-2. It's because of the way the schedule has shaken out. They are about to get in tough. Now they have Miami this week, and then they are at Indianapolis next week. They just changed quarterbacks. Joe Flacco is now the starting quarterback in Indianapolis, which makes them probably more competitive at this point. Sad to say for the Colts, who had high hopes for Anthony Richardson. But after that, it gets difficult. You know, the Bills' home stretch is rugged. They have, although there's a bye in between, they have the Chiefs and the 49ers in back-to-back weeks. Granted, they haven't played the Patriots yet. You don't want to assume, but that's probably a couple of wins right there. Yeah. But yeah, that's they're going to be. They're not going to cruise into the postseason. Let's put it that way. They're going to be put to the test. We're going to learn a lot more about them. That's the thing, Alan, that I don't at 6-2. And I did write a column that their identity is starting to come into focus, which is about when a team's identity does, regardless of continuity, the coach being the same, the quarterback, your offensive system being the same, whatever. You still, every season's a little bit different. It's an organic thing, and an identity comes to the fore. And you really don't get it until about mid to late October, maybe even early November, that a coach really knows who he can count on, and with an injury here or a backup being elevated there, all the different things that happen. And I think that the Bills are playing with a lot of composure. They've played 2 of their last 3 games. They've been in the game that set the record, or marked the most accepted penalties all season in the NFL. 2 weeks ago, it was against the Jets, 22 accepted penalties between the 2 teams. And just this past week, it was 24-25. It was by a lot. I mean, it went so, and they're winning those games, and they're winning those games comfortably. So to me, that shows a lot of composure. They shake things off pretty easily. Josh Allen threw his first interception in 301 passes. The last time he was intercepted in a game, including the playoffs, was the finale, the first half of the regular season finale last year in Miami. Miami got him twice, and then he hadn't thrown another interception again. So going out to Seattle, and to win like that, I think was a statement, even though I don't think Seattle's, we're not talking about the elite of the NFC, but still, we're going to learn, because of that schedule that I was talking about that's upcoming. We're going to learn a lot more, but I do think that they are coming in. They're tough. They are composed, even though they make some sloppy mistakes. That doesn't seem to hurt them. I mean, so that to me, I guess, is a little bit of a surprise. The sloppiness, some situational awareness issues that they had against the Jets out at the Meadowlands in that game. But they're still overcoming it. They don't seem to get mortally wounded during the course of a game. Now, you got to go back a month and a half to Baltimore when Derrick Henry runs, 82 yards on the first offensive snap for the Ravens or whatever it was. And it was demoralizing to have that happen. That was the worst loss of the year, but Baltimore's really good. And Derrick Henry's a future Hall of Famer. And they're still, again, learning about themselves. They had key injuries. Most of those players are back. So I think that this is kind of shaping up to be a very effective, or I think we're going to look back on it anyway, as an effective run up to the postseason. It's almost like this schedule. They started out at home with Arizona. They had Tennessee at home, being able to go out to Seattle, which is a test on the road. But they do have these opponents mixed in that they have been able to evolve and develop almost in a way that you would maybe draw it up, with the exception of getting lumped up, against Baltimore. They've played over half their road games. They've played 5 road games. So they are in pretty decent position, I think, barring significant injury, collapse. This is a team that lost to Urban Meyer, just, however many years ago. Urban Meyer was the Jacksonville Jaguars head coach. They managed to do that. So there's a clunker, throw in a clunker here or there, but they're looking pretty good on both sides of the ball too, Alan. I mean, that's where I thought that it would be, when you have Josh Allen at quarterback, yeah, you can quibble about what the receivers are going to look like without Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis. And they were pedestrian. They go out and get Amari Cooper. The rookie Keon Coleman is starting to evolve also. He's starting to look dangerous on a game-to-game basis instead of just flashing like he did maybe through the first month. He's starting to look like a threat. The defense was, losing both safeties, which we talked about when we did the show during the preseason. We talked about Jordan Poyer and what a loss that would be in terms of leadership. And the Bills defense looks every bit as good as it did. I mean, they are the Seahawks hadn't scored fewer than 20 points in the game heading into the season. I think they were the only team. There might have been one other team that had done that, that had scored at least 20 points every game. And they scored their touchdown in garbage time. That was a 3-point game that the Bills defense held up. It was against the Bills backups. And they went to, and again, I know I keep saying it, but to go all the way out, the 12th man and the infamous crowd and everything in a rain. I mean, they just totally destroyed the Seahawks offense.
Yeah, you mentioned the wide receiver core, and I saw the Keon Coleman touchdown was pretty sweet. And his interviews are classic. The kid's a trip. Speaking of kids who are trips, Mac Hollins, former Dolphins, how's he faring out over there?
He hasn't. It's been a big disappointment, especially with the personality. First impression with Mac Hollins, I think fan favorite. It's hard not to be. He's quirky. He's fun. The type of guy that when he's introduced to a fan base, it's like, all right, giddy up. This guy's different enough, and he just cannot get chemistry with Josh Allen. Now he has a couple of touchdown receptions, but if you watch him on a route to route basis, or I should say on a target to target basis, it's like Josh Allen doesn't know where Mac Hollins is going, or Mac Hollins doesn't know what Josh Allen's thinking. They just balls skip. They just don't. It's all disjointed. It's almost a borderline miracle when they do complete a pass to Mac Hollins. And I don't know what it is, because he's a veteran. Josh Allen's no rookie. I mean, he's been in the league. This is his 8th NFL season. He has chemistry with all kinds of guys. Amari Cooper looked good on 4 days' notice with Josh Allen 2 weeks ago or 2 Sundays ago against the Titans. Mac Hollins just can't seem to do it. And he's been with them for 6 months. And I don't know what to make of it. I don't think they do either.
But he's contributing on special teams, right? Because he's a very good special teams player as well.
Yes, he is. I mean, he's out there. He's a spiritual leader. He's one of those dudes. You know, the Bills love having him. They love having him. They just can't seem to get him in the mix on offense.
Okay, and then the flip side, if we want to look at it as sort of a trade, even though it's not, as you kind of predicted, Jordan Poyer's great intangibles, great leader, but the movement's not there. He got exposed bad by Trey McBride.
Yeah, he looked pretty rough against the Bills in their first. I mean, the 15-yard penalty on the unnecessary roughness or late hit. I don't recall what it was. I can picture the play. I don't know what the exact penalty was. And then the long run up the right sideline, up the Bills sideline, in which he totally either he misread or just didn't have enough get up. He was left in the dust, and you can't have that happen when you're a safety. Yeah, his best days are behind him for sure. But Alan, what's it been like in terms of him? Did you hear about him rubbing off on guys, or do the losses matter so much that nobody even cares about stuff like that?
You talk about in terms of intangibles and the leadership and the mentorship.
Yeah,
and all
like
that.
Jordan Poyer, do they the team, are they happy to have him, or are they just enduring him at this point?
I think they're enduring him. He missed a couple of games out of shin injury, got back in the lineup, and you talk to players and they say the good things. He's a great leader and all that, and he ruffled a lot of feathers or stirred a lot of things with his comment early in training camp that when he used to play for the Bills, you like it was something along the lines of you punch the Dolphins in the mouth and they don't fight back, and it's kind of the reputation that the Dolphins have. They're not necessarily.
It's not like it's a new head coach. It's not like it was a total culture change. He was talking about his teammates.
Correct. And they made the Dolphins made a couple of veteran acquisitions in the offseason on the defense. Calais Campbell has been absolutely superb in every possible way. The only complaint you can have about the dude is he plays 40 snaps. He played 44 snaps against Arizona because Zach Sealer was out, and that's pretty much all you can ask of a 38-year-old defensive lineman.
And as great as he's been, like you say, for Calais Campbell to come in and be your best player is troublesome. He needs to come in and be a great complementary player, not your best player overall. Great signing, but the other guys haven't exactly stepped up.
No, and the big names, and I wrote about this, is the big names haven't played like the big names, and that includes Tyreek, and that's with or without Tua. Outside of the 80-yard catch against Jacksonville, not been a whole lot. And the other thing, and this is a question I'm going to ask you here, outside of a playoff game while he was with the Chiefs, Tyreek has exactly 0 100-yard outings against Buffalo, and we're talking 8 or 9 games.
Yeah, it's got to be frustrating for him. And it's, Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas have been sensational. Now, Christian Benford is never going to, I guess he could eventually be a household name, but he is so quiet. He is a late round draft pick from Villanova, and he was the Bills' second cornerback. They drafted a cornerback, Kaiir Elam, in the first round that year.
Florida.
And Benford came in and just took the job. Kid from a 1AA program, and has been borderline lockdown. He is, but you don't ever hear him. They don't throw his way a ton. So he doesn't make big interceptions. Douglas is probably more of that player. He'll come up with the big forced fumble or the takeaway or something. But Benford's the better cover cornerback, maybe one of the best in the NFL based on the analytic. Well, based on the analytics, he is. Depending on how much weight you want to put on analytics, which analytics by definition are supposed to be objective, but they're backed by subjective people making the grades, right? So it's kind of weird when you're talking about coverages and things and who, right? But the analytics say he's maybe he's a top 5 cover corner in the NFL. So, and the results show it. And Tyreek Hill is anecdote example number 1. Because the Bills have been able to figure him out. They've been able to remove him from games. And like they just did with Kenneth Walker. Now, DK Metcalf didn't play, which makes it easier. But to be able to totally remove Kenneth Walker and the entire Seahawks rushing game, which has been pretty good all year, says something about what the Bills have been able to do defensively from a scheme standpoint.
Yeah, and it's crazy. You look back at that week 2 game on Thursday night. I think Ingram was the guy's name. Had 2 interceptions, including the pick 6. Guy's a backup.
Right.
And you look at all the big names they lost, the new starters in place. From where I sit, they're all been upgrades. I mean, this is, I guess, it's a major hat tip to the scouting department. Is it player development? Where does the credit go there? Because Dolphin fans would like some of that ability to lose a big name and replace him and actually not take a downgrade.
I think it's both. They identified Taylor Rapp from the Rams a couple of years ago as a guy to bring in. They signed him to only a 1-year deal because they were trying to protect their compensatory formula. They didn't want to sign him to more, to too fat of a deal, but they identified him as a guy to phase in when either Jordan Poyer or Micah Hyde, in this case, it happened to be both, which I'm sure the Bills didn't like, but they had Taylor Rapp waiting and having, learn the system, ready to go. Now they drafted Cole Bishop in the 2nd round. They were thrilled with that pick out of Utah. Cole Bishop has not been quite ready yet, and he has gotten a start or 2, I think, maybe just 1 start, and he got torched. He got torched by Nico Collins down in Houston, and it wasn't even close. In fact, got so torched that Collins blew out his hamstring on the play, still scored the touchdown. Yeah. And they signed Mike Edwards from the Kansas City Chiefs, and he can't get a uniform on game day. So those were the guys that were supposed to come in and do the patchwork. And here's the guy. I'm not going to say he's been a star by any stretch, but he's got a couple interceptions. Damar Hamlin didn't start a game last year because of the cardiac arrest that he was coming off of. And there was a lot of uncertainty. He was playing a little bit timid, wasn't quite ready to go. Everything was a high pressure situation when he did it for the first time. First time putting on pads, first time full contact, first time in a game, first time this, that, and the other. And so he played some special teams last year. I don't know how many defensive snaps he got, 20, 30. I mean, not much. And he's been holding down the fort with Taylor Rapp. So I'm not saying that Damar Hamlin's better than Jordan. Well, maybe better than Jordan Poyer now, but which is kind of strange to hear coming out of my own mouth. But I think that, it's been pretty solid. And then Taron Johnson. I mean, it's funny whenever you talk about the Bills and their secondary, Taron Johnson gets mentioned, is one of the last people to get mentioned because safeties mean so much in Sean McDermott's defense that a lot of it is safety based. And then the corners have been so good, but Taron Johnson is maybe the best nickel corner in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And he's had a broken forearm. He's been playing with that. He's got a special cast on it. He missed a few games, but the defense is so much different now that he didn't play in Miami, right? That was the Cam Lewis game and, then Jamarcus Ingram game. And so he's back and he's going after guys. I mean, he's not playing with any kind of shyness at all with that. I don't know if it's technically still considered a broken forearm, but it's healing. I'm sure it's not, doesn't feel great. And they're an impressive secondary, and yet there might not be anybody with a Pro Bowl among them.
Got 2 other quick ones for you before we wrap it up. And first one is, because you mentioned Damar Hamlin, was there any period of time after the Thursday night game, because while it was no fault of his own, but he was involved in the collision that put 2 on IR with a concussion, did he express any sort of I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, not trauma, but was he affected in any way, shape, or form by that?
Screwed up in the head, I talked to him at his locker stall after that game because I thought of it, and in the immediacy, look, he doesn't want to, and I think the lead to my story was, this is a guy who would love to not be the spokesman for life-threatening injuries, but on this, the juxtaposition was just too obvious to not talk to him about, what goes through your head when you see a guy, because it wasn't as though Tua was flagged by the independent neurosurgeon and trotted off the field into the blue tent. He was knocked out with his hands, the whole, the fencing posture and all the different involuntary things that happened, they knew right away. And to have made that hit, and he talked about how it does go through your mind. But in that moment, immediately after, he seemed to be looking at it in a very calm way. He says he sees a therapist. He's been talking about these things for a long time, about probably for his own peace of mind every time he puts that helmet on and trots out the tunnel onto the field for a practice, let alone for a game or whatever. The idea of getting over these hurdles, these mental hurdles. So he's, I think, equipped more than a lot of people because of the professional guidance that he's gotten in terms of mental therapy. But he showed no blips, I guess, for lack of a better term, in regard to that. He spoke of it right after the game and seemed to be in a pretty good place about it.
Okay. Last one involves the matchup on Sunday, and I am putting out stuff on Twitter. Basically, I'm saying, like, never say never. All the signs point Dolphins are going to get spanked. But I say, but you never know, and I'm getting pushback of like they'll never. When you're crazy, you're just selling Kool-Aid or drinking the Kool-Aid and all that, or hopium, whatever. Okay, so from the other vantage point, from the Buffalo standpoint, do you see a realistic scenario where the Bills don't come away with a win and a comfortable win at that?
I just wanted to look it up while you were asking the question. The Bills opened as a 3-point favorite, and it's already 6.5 somewheres. I mean, if you shop it around, it looks like FanDuel has it at 6.5. MGM is at 6.5. And I apologize, Alan, if your sponsors or anybody say you're not allowed to mention them. Mention now. Sorry about that. We can go back and bleep it. Yeah. In Buffalo too. I mean, these fans, I'm not a big fan base. There's a lot of pandering that goes on when it comes to fan bases, right? We even see it here in Western New York. The media loves to, tailgating photos and the fan stories that you see on local TV. And it's just kind of, everybody's just getting a pat on the back about how great we are. It's kind of this community type. And I've always kind of rolled my eyes, say with their best fans in Buffalo, the best fans are here. I mean, like, I've covered sports in a lot of different places, and their fans think they're the best too. And all right, so maybe the best tailgaters, well, I don't know, pretty good tailgating in Green Bay and Chicago. I mean, anyways, it's all kind of, to me, it's a bit of an eye roll. Geno Smith said he was shocked at how loud the Bills fans were in Seattle. Yeah, now, this is the place with used to have the decibel record, and 12th man is a retired jersey and all that stuff. And it was something. Like, the Bills scored a touchdown early, and even in the press box behind the glass, you could hear it. And so these guys travel, and they are feeling it. It's like they've gotten crazier in a good way. I mean, this play, it has turned, it's always been a bit of a tough place to play. But they wear this badge, and the chests get puffed out farther and farther and farther about this fan base mentality. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to be the difference, but this is not, to come into Buffalo and win is hard. It is hard. Is it 6.5 or 7 points hard? Probably. The Bills are really good. They're playing well now. They're healthy. I don't know about Terrell Bernard. He's the green dot linebacker. He's the defensive captain. He's got an ankle injury. He got stepped on, looked pretty bad, but I think he was limited last week. I don't know how he shapes out this week, but their backups are pretty good. But they are healthier, especially in the secondary, than they were when the Dolphins saw them 5 weeks ago. Yeah, I don't see it, and I'll have to predict. I'll have to make a prediction. I don't know if I'll pick a blowout or not. Maybe as the week goes on, I'll get a better feel for it. But this is also one of those games that the Bills wouldn't overlook. They have Indianapolis next week. They know, so it's not like they're looking past the Dolphins at, say, the Chiefs or Baltimore or another, like one of those get over, I don't want to say the hump, but one of those teams that you really need to make a statement against. I think everything's going to be all in on beating the Dolphins, which in the division it should be. And I think it's going to probably have to take a crazy play, something wacky happening, a big momentum boost. You're not going to take the fans out of the game. You're not going to, the Bills they're playing composed, which is what I've talked about earlier. I don't see it. Barring anything really weird. Well, let me say this. The Bills kicker, I don't know if it's going to come down to Tyler Bass. He's been going through it, and he's been going through it since last postseason. Now he's been making his kicks, but if you take a look at him, they're like point blank kicks. He's missed an extra point here or there. He's missing some 40-yarders here and there. If the game's on the line, which we haven't really seen yet this season, that's a question. That's a question. But beyond that, I don't see the Dolphins winning this game.
Probably not a great sign when your biggest hope is that it comes down to the opposing kicker and he misses it. Yeah,
the weather's supposed to be nice. I think, it's not going to be a weather game. So, the ball squirting around like a bar of soap or anything like that. Not like it did in Seattle. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the one thing the Dolphins will have in their favor is the desperation factor, because they get down to 2-6, and it's like, okay, let's start maybe planning for 2025. So, what do you
think? Real, I know we've gone on way too long, but what do you think, Alan, about the idea that the Bills have? I mean, we're talking about Damar Hamlin and his state of mind. What about Tua's state of mind of going up against the Bills, who have not the game 3 or 4 years ago, where Matt Milano crushed him? That was a rib injury. It was a torso injury or something or other. It wasn't a head injury, but I mean, the Bills have to be well, I don't say have to be, but I wonder if the Bills are one of those teams where he's like dreading, just how they get after it.
He should, because in addition to Matt Milano, which may or may not have been a concussion, it was officially listed as back. AJ Epinesa in 2021 broke his ribs.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, it was Epinesa. Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, I would think it would cross his mind, not that he's going to admit it, but I would think that bad things have happened against the Bills. And then this first game against the Bills was the 2020 finale when the Dolphins had a shot to make the playoffs with a win. The Bills had already clinched, and the Dolphins got smoked 56-26. So they have not been very happy memories for Tua.
Missed it by that much.
Yeah, came close. Gave it the old college try. But like I say, that's why they play the games. Certainly the desperation factors in Dolphins' favor. And there have been bigger upsets in Dolphin history than the one we would see on Sunday against the Bills. On that note, we're going to wrap it up. Another big thanks to Tim Graham from The Athletics. Tim, much appreciated.
I always enjoy it.
Catch his work at The Athletic. You see the Twitter handle. You don't see it if you're listening to this on the audio podcast. It's at by Tim Graham. And please like, subscribe, share all that good stuff. We will be back on Wednesday. Thanks, everyone.